India. The webinar is an outcome of the Safe, Vibrant and Healthy Public Spaces project, which was developed by our organization, and it focuses on the development of adolescent-friendly public spaces within Indian cities. Today's session is divided into two parts. The first part will focus on taking you through our project and introducing you to the Public Spaces Assessment Framework, which was developed during its course. The second part of the webinar will be a panel discussion with sector experts who will bring their ground experience of working in the field of adolescent development and well-being, and will share their perspectives on the relevance of adolescent-friendly public spaces in cities, and how such initiatives can be mainstreamed to include adolescents. In case any of you have any questions during the presentation or the panel discussion, please type it in the chat box, and we shall take them towards the end. I would also request all the panelists to kindly switch their videos on during the panel discussion. I would now like to invite Jaya Srinivasan, who is the Senior Manager for Projects at Eminent, where she leads the design and implementation of projects across different sectors with a focus on youth well-being, to give an introduction to the Safe, Vibrant and Healthy Public Spaces project. Eminent was the managing partner for the project during its phase 1. Over to you, Jaya. Thank you.
Thank you, Siddharth, and I hope you can all hear me. Good afternoon. It's great to be here, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this webinar. I'll start off by giving you a quick overview of the Healthy Cities for Adolescents program, which is a global program supported by Fondation Botnar, a Swiss-based foundation. And it aims at enhancing the health and well-being of young people in secondary cities through multi-stakeholder community-centered programs. In the focus countries, the programs are set on different themes, and they can look at anything from governance to gender to education. And in India, we followed a process which involved a rapid assessment to identify the cities and the states that we could look at. Since Rajasthan and Orissa are focus states for Fondation Botnar, we did a deep dive into these states to identify the cities where we could actually implement programs. We looked at the smart cities in these states because we wanted to explore environments that had some amount of interest in technology, in partnerships, this being a collaborative approach. And we zeroed in on Jaipur and Bhubaneswar as our implementation cities for various reasons, especially the interest of stakeholders, and you will hear from some of them later during this webinar. And also the amount of participation and interest that we saw from adolescents in these cities. So while we were developing the program design, we spoke to a number of young people through roundtables, through a nationwide survey that we did, to figure out what their key areas of interest were. And some of the topics that came up very strongly repeatedly during these conversations were gender, the need to build well-being through life skills, the need to look at healthy public spaces. And that is one of the themes that we picked for our projects, or what we call demonstrator projects in 2021-22. To test out how these interventions could work. So WRI was our partner for one of these demonstrator projects. And as you can see on your screens, the project that they looked at focused on adolescent inclusion in public space development. Now, the main focus of this project was on educating adolescents on public spaces, on what public spaces can actually mean, because many of us have a very nebulous understanding of what public spaces are, but what do they actually mean, and how can we actually participate in making them conducive to our needs? How can we be equal stakeholders in public spaces and have a decision-making partner approach towards them? How can we actually have our voices heard? So this is something adolescents may not be aware of, and a lot of us may not be aware of. And WRI played a role in educating adolescents in the cities that we worked in to tell them what public spaces could mean and how they could actually take charge of the spaces that they inhabited. So basically training adolescents to be change agents, to build their capacity to understand public spaces and become public space ambassadors through which they take their work forward. And another key part of this demonstrator project was working with local partners in both these cities, because the partners that we have worked with bring a tremendous amount of knowledge, not just of their cities, but also of the needs of young people, considering they work very actively with them. So learning from them, hearing from them, and exploring collaboration opportunities with them was a very critical part of the project. So I hope that is a good overview for you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have later, but now I'll hand it back to the WRI team to talk a bit more about the project. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Jaya. I would now invite Prerna Mehta, Associate Director for Urban Development at WRI-India, to present the Safe, Vibrant and Healthy Public Spaces project and the assessment framework. Thank you, Prerna.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you, Jaya. I just want to check if you all can see my screen. Is my screen visible to everyone? Great. Thank you. Thank you, Siddharth and Jaya, for setting the context of today's conversation. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As Siddharth mentioned, and I will be talking about a public spaces assessment framework that is developed as part of Safe, Vibrant and Healthy Public Spaces project. This framework is developed keeping in view adolescent needs and their perspective about the design and development of public spaces in our cities. Besides this, the framework also aims to expand the definition of public spaces, not only for various user groups, but also for facility providers. Before we dive into the details of the framework, let's understand why adolescents. India is the youngest nation in the world, with adolescents accounting for about 21% of total urban population. They have a potential to make significant contributions to country's economic growth. Thus, investing in creating healthy ecosystems for adolescents is a vital step towards leveraging this demographic dividend. Often we observe that design and development of cities consider requirements of senior citizens, and of late we are observing the inclusion of toddler-friendly design, especially for the public realm. However, lens of adolescent needs and their perception is missing in the public spaces or public realm development process. Globally, public spaces for youth and adolescents is reflected in the new urban agenda and the Sustainable Development Goal, especially the Goal 11. But nationally, the same does not holistically reflect, except in specific initiatives or schemes, such as Child-Friendly Smart Cities or Nurturing Neighborhoods Challenge, or programs and schemes at center and state level, such as Rashtriya Kishore Swasthya Karikaram, National Youth Policy, National Education Policy, etc., that enables adolescent inclusion largely from the perspective of education, health, and skill development. There are no opportunities for adolescent inclusion within public spaces development process, for that matter, and for the larger urban development ecosystem. Recognizing this gap, WRI-India, under the Healthy Cities for Adolescent program of Fondation Botnar, designed this Safe, Vibrant, and Healthy Public Spaces for Adolescent project. The goal of this project is to impart knowledge, create awareness about need as well as significance of safe, vibrant, and healthy public spaces for adolescents, and to develop a foundational system for furthering long-term actions for development of adolescent-friendly public spaces. To achieve this goal, it is vital to understand potential roles of adolescents in public spaces development. They can become critical contributors with respect to voicing their needs, conducting assessments, providing ideas or innovative solutions, become change agents of their neighborhoods, and can act as informants and influencers for community at large. The project focused on understanding adolescent needs with respect to public spaces and creating a mechanism to assess the public spaces. This brings us to the public spaces assessment framework. The developed framework provides an opportunity to assess any public space in its current form or state for necessary rejuvenation, And it also acts as a checklist and needs assessment framework that can inform the design and programming of any upcoming public space. Additionally, it consists of mechanisms to evaluate the impact of implementation through a post-intervention assessment. Now let's look at the assessment framework more closely. Overall, the framework follows an inclusive approach to include adolescents in public spaces development process. It offers a checklist and a scoring tool that helps users to determine the status of public space infrastructure through the lens of adolescents, as well as required interventions which can aid decision-making of city authorities and or any other stakeholders that is taking up the activity. Background research, stakeholder interactions, adolescent interactions through FGDs, as well as workshops informed the development of this framework. Our engagements with various stakeholders and adolescents help to identify elements of safe, vibrant, and healthy public spaces. This is just a glimpse of elements that are identified by adolescents in the conducted interactions. The different colors signifies the safe, vibrant, and healthy categories. To develop this framework, we began by understanding what an adolescent would typically look for in a public space through a set of questions. And to develop this framework, we began to understand what an adolescent, the response to this interaction coupled with other background research guided the consolidation of identified elements under 5 parameters as their sub-parameters. Let's dive into specific details of the framework document. The framework document considers different user groups that will be direct or indirect beneficiaries of adolescent-friendly public spaces. It also considers different typologies of public spaces to be assessed or improved or developed. It is vital to note that these typologies helps in expanding the definition of public spaces for adolescent groups beyond the formal spaces and has included natural and incidental spaces as well. Moving ahead, the framework details who all can use this framework, keeping in view that it is flexible enough to be used as a top-down assessment framework or bottom-up assessment framework. This means that the process of identification of public spaces for development or improvement can be undertaken either by city agencies in a top-down scenario or by user group in a bottom-up scenario. For conducting the assessment, preparation will entail creating a core team that should include adolescents, city agency representatives, sector experts, and representatives from local community or neighborhood. The core team can then define the type and category of identified public spaces. The core team then identifies about 15 to 20 adolescents within the neighborhood to conduct the assessment for imparting the scoring. Once this is done, the scores are analyzed to inform the design for necessary on-ground interventions. This assessment process is led by observation-based survey and a perception-based survey. The observation-based survey, which can be conducted by all stakeholders, is a spatial assessment of public spaces, taking its infrastructure and amenities into consideration. The perception-based survey, which needs to be conducted by a group of adolescents from the neighborhood, is an experiential assessment, taking the qualitative aspects of the public spaces into consideration. This is a sample of special assessment template, which is an observation-based survey. As you can see, the assessment questions are based on the parameters that is being assessed, and it provides a set of responses that can be chosen to give a score. This slide shows the sample of user assessment template for registering perception-based survey. Once the observation and perception-based surveys are complete and recorded with the scores in the survey sheets, total score of each parameter is calculated along with its percentage. Please note that the higher the percentage indicates better performance of a parameter. This assessment will help to identify the low-performing parameters that will need improvement and hence will guide the design priorities. Once the design and implementation is done, this framework can be used to record the impact of implementation by reassessing the low-performing parameters. This in turn allows for a feedback loop that can inform future actions or similar interactions that might be in queue for implementation, thus making this assessment process more robust and comprehensive. This brings me to the end of this presentation. Thank you for your interest, and back to you, Siddharth.
Thank you for the presentation, Prerna. We shall be now moving into the second part of the webinar, which is the panel discussion. Our first panelist for the day is Jayati Das. She's a senior international development professional, social justice and human rights advocate. Jayati has led the Healthy Cities for Adolescents program phase 1 initiative and designed the evidence to action framework that focuses on evidence building for policy change. Our second panelist joining us today is Jaya Srinivasan, whom we've already been introduced to before. Our third panelist is Arpita Patnaik, who is the Executive Director for Hamara Bachpan Trust. Arpita has more than 14 years of experience working with communities, socio-economically challenged segments in difficult geographies, and with children and women living in urban poverty. Our fourth panelist today is Nilima Agarwal, Deputy General Manager of Programs of Magic Bus India Foundation in Rajasthan, and she has extensive experience working on youth education and skill development within local communities. Our final panelist for this day is Mr. Charu Goswami, who is a director at I-India, an NGO based in Jaipur. He has been working with the development sector since 2003 and implemented projects on education, legal awareness, and empowerment of the youth. The discussion shall be moderated by Jaya Hindao, Program Director for Integrated Urban Development, Planning and Resilience at WRI-India. Over to you, Jaya.
Thank you very much, Siddharth and Prerna, for setting the context, and also Jaya. And just hello and welcome to everyone. And thank you for joining us for a conversation that we don't focus much on in our cities, though we should. Now, much is made about the demographic dividend in Indian cities in India, right? So we are one of the youngest countries in the world, with a third of our population, which is the youth, which is 10 to 24 years, and a fifth, like Prerna mentioned, of the population being adolescents. But this is also sort of the neglected middle child, or also the segment whose voice is often least represented in planning and decision making of the design in cities and public spaces. So if you look around you, you will notice that public spaces in India are usually designed with this, not with this cohort in mind. They're mostly envisioned for children or for the elderly at most. And also now I want to point to something, agent-placed cities, which is what we want to do so that, the population stays back, talent is kind of homegrown and our cities thrive. These are cities where people can go to school, they have choices of universities, have job options, facilities for elderly as they age. So we not only need to create the environment of belonging, but also infrastructure that caters to all of this age group. And public space is the type of infrastructure that not only promotes the interaction for all of this to happen, but also contributes to physical and mental health and well-being of everyone. So in Indian cities, we clearly need to increase the supply of good quality public spaces, especially those which are inclusive of adolescents. How do we get there, and what efforts are afoot right now towards that goal? That is the conversation here today. So welcome again, everyone. And Jayati, I'd like to start with you. Now, you've been working for a while towards driving improvements in the lived experience of children and adolescents across various countries. In India, this dialogue is new. So how do you envision the role of adolescents as evidence builders, and what are the challenges in bringing them into the formal city building or decision-making processes? Jayati?
You're on mute. Jayati, can you unmute yourself, please? Thank
Yes.
you.
I hope everyone can hear me.
Well,
Good. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. And thank you. Those are good questions. Let me just, as you said, that I have worked across different countries, 50, 60 cities in the world. I work very closely with UN Habitat in an advisory role in their social inclusion, and mainly the inclusion of young people and their voices and their participation in local to global processes of governance and city planning. So just to reflect on the UN, what the UN is doing will be really important, because you're doing such great work and the thinking at the local level. As you know, that the UN has called for a decade of action. As you know, it is about accelerating the implementation of SDGs. As also I heard, I think Prerna, you said that 60% of urban, settlements are now, populated by young people. And but the UN has acknowledged that this huge cohort of people who are current citizens and future leaders are not represented fairly in social and political processes, and also mainly to discuss the issues that are impacting their lives. And you can see COP27, which is happening in Egypt, the voices of young people saying, you're going to leave this earth, and this climate action, we really need you to make some decisions. That's the kind of, continuous advocacy that is happening. And the city level decision-making processes, honestly, to my experience, there are not many governments, city governments, local governments, where there is a fair representation. Or if you look at the planning strategies, that there are youth well-being strategies included in the city plans. And so the meaningful engagement of young people has been the call at the UN, UN Habitat 3 conference, which produced the New Urban Agenda. You've also got a lot of conversations now happening at the UN headquarters level about youth participation. They've just set up a youth office in UN headquarters. And then very recently, we, Fondation Botnar, is in collaboration with the UN Habitat to design Youth 2030 cities, which I believe India was also a part of, which is about the knowledge that is required to engage young people, getting that information about how are their cities faring in local level implementation of SDGs. And SDG 3 is, health and well-being of a whole community, which includes youth. So now bringing that to then healthy cities for adolescents, which I believe Jaya has already introduced at the beginning, we are looking at young people and their voice and participation. And so we do believe the focus of this program is about empowering young people with the knowledge, with information about their own, health and well-being issues, about greater kind of societal, social, and political issues that are impacting their lives, but getting them to understand an equal kind of their voice and as equal partner in developing solutions, in proactively proposing innovative ideas and stories of impact that would work or would not work, in many ways negative impact. And this is where then is how do we empower young people and create spaces for them to engage in broader dialogue and discussions on these critical issues of healthy cities and, well-being issues overall. And the Healthy Cities for Adolescents program is currently, of course, is being managed by ECORIS, a UK-based agency, is a Fondation Botnar initiative. And critical to this is then, as I said, the positioning of young people as equal stakeholder in the city, which has been missing in this discourse and dialogue throughout about sustainable cities. Moving on to then the evidence building and youth as evidence builders. So Fondation Botnar, with collaboration with University of Melbourne, we've designed a to action framework, which the aim of the framework really is looking at systematically gathering evidence, systematically kind of, using that evidence, leveraging that evidence to co-design programs, to co-produce continuous in stories of impact, stories of what's not working. So basically the aim is what's working and not working. For in case of WRI, it'll be what's working and not working in equitable and green and public spaces that serve purpose for everyone in the community. Fundamental to the E2A is youth as evidence builders, which means that they have the knowledge, they are empowered with the knowledge, and they're empowered with the techniques and the information and the spaces where they can interact and meaningfully inform city governance processes, not just government, but city governance processes, where they can interact with the civil society, armed with all the information, which is where we are saying that they need to be a part of the whole project cycle, not just come in tokenistically, come in and, in and out of it. Today's young people are a resource. Honestly, maybe I wasn't when I was young, but today's young people are digital natives. They have the power to collect information, whether we like it or not. They have the reach to take that information and use it. So for us at designing E2A was looking at young people from that lens of positive, people with positive kind of energy that can bring new ideas, bring new thinking, and be the disruptive force that we need in this society today. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much, Jaya.
Thank you, Jayati. So that also kind of part answers my second question about, what would success look like to you of this program, but I'll come back to you later on that. Jay, I'd like to come to you. You talked about, adolescents as change agents. Now, what are the opportunities for adolescents to become change agents in the city development process? What are the barriers that you see? And is there an example of this being done successfully somewhere that you would like to highlight?
Thanks, Jaya. I think Jayati covered. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, okay, great. So I think Jayati spoke about a lot of the things that we have actually been talking about, especially because we worked on the design of HCA India together. So let me start with the gaps that we have seen, not just in our own work, but also while talking to a number of stakeholders as we designed the program. I think one of the key things for us is that adolescents have often been seen as beneficiaries or as people whose inputs are sought at a particular stage of the program, but nothing really goes back to them later, or their inputs are not considered seriously enough. So you give them a questionnaire, you get some information from them, but what happens to that information? We design a program and then we move on. So that is an approach that we consciously want to avoid. And we see a lot of other organizations also taking that very seriously and saying, no, we need to co-design processes with young people and not just treat them as sources of information. So I think that is one important opportunity. And I have come across a couple of instances recently where in a call for applications for programs that involve young people, there are specific calls for youth advisory boards to be set up. And young people who are part of these boards are being compensated for their time. So it gives people across different socioeconomic classes, hopefully, the chance to participate in a meaningful manner and have their voices heard where they haven't been earlier. Another key gap, I think, for us that is ensuring intersectionality and representation of young people across different socioeconomic groups. So the HCA program is focused on low-income communities. That said, we have in our surveys, in our interactions, spoken to young people across different groups. But I think we have consciously tried to make an effort to reach out to people who may not have an opportunity to participate in these convenings or gatherings. When we actually did the mapping and when we had conversations with young people for HCA India, it was peak COVID time and we had to do most of the work online. But we still made an effort to identify young people in remote parts of the country also or in tier 2, tier 3 cities where access wasn't really great, but working through their partner NGOs to somehow reach them, make sure that they could join us even for that particular amount of time, making sure there was an interpreter available so that if there was language barrier, they were still heard and they could interact with people from other parts of the country without feeling left out. Then there are other pressures perhaps that are that we'll have to jointly figure out how to deal with. But there are things that prevent young people from participating, such as their academic pressures, for example, college schedules, school routines. Many young people work part-time, so they finish school and then they work, or if in the case of girls, they have to take care of household chores. So these are barriers to their participation, but working, there are, again, a lot of organizations who are actively bringing these girls into their institutions and giving them that space to talk about things, giving them a safe space where they can congregate and work on developing their skills. And I think one of the things that I mentioned earlier also is the limited understanding of public spaces among adolescents and maybe among citizens in general, right? And that is something we have sought to address through this program. Now, for me and for young people in general, when we talk to them, they look at public spaces through different lenses. They don't look at a public space as a park alone. And so they'll talk to you about safety, they'll talk to you about lighting, they'll talk to you about sanitation. It's a multi-sectoral thing. So all of the different challenges that I have spoken about and the opportunities that we've seen, they contribute to the building of safe, inclusive public spaces somehow through different lenses, perhaps. But I think one of the biggest opportunities here is multi-sectoral collaboration and mentoring young people through the coming together of organizations across different sectors, because then you're able to introduce young people to ideas that they haven't even thought about, perhaps. Like I was telling somebody earlier, when I studied engineering, and I did it because everybody around me was doing it, but I hadn't even known that a career in economics or in literature was a possibility because I hadn't heard of it. So if we're able to give young people the opportunity, and I think we have the resources through a consortium like this, if we're able to give them that opportunity to hear about different perspectives and look at the world that exists beyond what they're taught about in school and in their own communities, I think there's a lot that they can do for urban development.
Great, thank you so much, Jaya. Now, I'll come to the implementers, and that, as we know, in any program, in anything that we do, that's the hardest part when the metal hits the road. So Charu, I'll come to you first. Having been part of the HCA project's first phase, what were some of the challenges you encountered? And importantly, what are the learnings that you've kind of gleaned and walked away with?
Hello, you are getting my voice? Yeah, so once again, thank you all of you, and thanks to WRI and Siddharth and everyone for inviting us for this webinar. So actually, to be honest, our main work is related to children's care and children's education and protection. Since 1993, we are working in this sector. And actually, our story, the story of our charity has started with the participation of children and with the participation of youth only. And our all activities are actually being designed and carried out with the voices of the beneficiary. We initially started with street schools in Jaipur, in slum areas and in street points, and children who are coming on these centers, they raise their voice, they share their concern, and with their concern we basically implemented and designed new projects for them. And now we are running formal schools and vocational training centers and care homes for the children. So our work is we did some work with awareness and through peer educators and community members. So we started with this idea only that at every stage we will involve our beneficiary as a key stakeholder, and they will raise their voice in design and implementation of the project. Coming to our partnership with WRI and the first phase, we feel that like public space is very important, where children and youth and especially adolescents need to raise their voice, because in our project itself we face so many issues, and we always hear such things from our beneficiary and especially adolescent, that they are lacking lot of things, especially in their slum areas, and when they go to the town and when they go to the cities, they basically have some idea, like they are lacking some facilities, and they always generate demand for that. But within our project we can provide those facilities, but at the larger area like in city or in a town, it is very difficult to implement such things, and it requires a proper structured program. And hopefully with the partnership of WRI and other like-minded organization, we'll be able to raise the voice of these adolescents, and we will be able to implement something very concrete as per the need and demand of adolescents. And you were talking about the challenges. Honestly, like the challenges will actually we will face once we will start the implementation of the project. In an initial phase, our role and responsibility was to basically engage the adolescent, and we are able to get those adolescents. And I am sitting in the same hall where the first interaction of children being with the adolescents being organized here in this same hall. So right now I'm not able to comment on any challenges, but once we will get into the project and we will basically practically start the working, we'll be able to comment more on that. But since you all have extensive experience in this particular area, so certainly the journey would be much smoother, and we'll be able to do something productive as per the need of adolescents and youth.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aru. We do hope the same. Nilima, I'd like to come to you next. I think in terms of the experience that you've had, what are the incentives that can be leveraged for public sector and city agencies' participation on this initiative, in your city? How do you make this a priority for them?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Jaya, for providing me this opportunity. Definitely, when we are talking about the safe and vibrant places, and talking about especially the role of youth in this creating this safe and vibrant places, we found that there is a big opportunity to create a collaborative approach among youth, create a collaborative approach between youth and these agencies. There are many ways to develop adolescent inclusive public spaces with the possible opportunities of including public sectors and city agencies. As we all know that in the city, there are many authorities which are directly or indirectly responsible for the city development. Majorly are city development authorities, municipal corporations, and town planning department are the major agencies. Those are working for the city developments. But when we closely observe their work, we found that every agencies are working in their own scope of work. So definitely there is an opportunity where we can took them together, where there is an opportunity where we can took them together on a particular platform to create a public spaces according to the choice and aspiration of the youth. Definitely, youth themselves can play a major role to create such opportunities, especially in the area of education, health, hygiene, and public awareness. Youth can develop their skills and also lead the activities so that agencies can also use them as a changing agents. So there are many areas where they both can work directly or together, especially in the areas where we can have a possibility to find hidden public spaces. In the cities, we can find many places are in a hidden form. These places are maybe in a community park, a corner of the street, old building structure, or community halls. These places are hidden. I'm saying these places are hidden because these places are occupied by unwanted elements, by city vendors, by garbage, or anything else, but not a very useful for a public use. So youth can identify these places for the agencies, and agencies can also develop a joint planning with a continuum of the activities and motivate the youth to lead the programs in their communities and also create a green space in their communities. So these are the few examples. Many more can be identified, many more can be developed together. So definitely there is a scope with the youth mentorship and with the planning with the relevant agencies. We can develop a you can say a useful and actual impactful plan to create a safe and vibrant cities. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nilima. Arpita, I'll come to you next, and I believe you have a few slides that you would like to show. And should I go ahead with the question first, and would you like to, show your slides subsequently?
Sure. Thanks, Jaya. I think I should first answer the question and then.
Sure. Sounds good. So, Arpita, the question for you is essentially that, I think we've all acknowledged that adolescents also are not a monolithic group. There are variations with respect to socioeconomic background, gender, ability. So, how can we think outside of the mainstream to get, equitable and inclusive results and outcomes? Are there any examples that you can cite?
Okay, thanks. So, thanks, Jaya. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very thankful to WRI for organizing this webinar and giving me and HBT the scope to share about the initiative that we have taken up towards making the public spaces in the cities friendly for adolescents. The organization that I am from, Hamara Bachpan Trust, it is working for ensuring people-friendly city and public spaces from the day of its inception, and adolescent being one of our target group. When you are asking about what are the when we are asking about what are the things or the initiatives that can be taken up to ensure equitable or accessible public spaces for adolescent and even for users of all age groups. So there are small things which can be practiced or which can be, the journey completely can be drawn off, where we can ensure the thing that my previous panelists were discussing. When we are talking about certain things, we are mostly taking the users as the passive, we are putting the users at the passive end. We are just including them for the designing of the program or designing of the thing, and then how much that is taken forward or how much the things are being developed as per their suggestion, that is yet to be discussed, and that is again things to be thought on the future. So talking about Hamara Bachpan, it was founded in 2012 by Dharitri Patnaik, an international development expert, but it was mostly founded as a campaign where the objective of the campaign was to working towards making the cities child friendly or adolescent friendly, and giving them the voices to raise the issue and to resolve even the issue by themselves. So while working with the Dutch-based foundation as the country representative to India, Dharitri conceptualized the campaign with an understanding that built environment plays a critical role in the holistic development of the children and adolescent, particularly the age group, and the built environment should be designed keeping their needs in mind. So when we are talking about cities, children and adolescents living in the slums are the most mostly we talk about them, and they do not have, because they do not have the access to the enabling and healthy environment. And the HBT started advocating to ensure
the enabling living condition for adolescents living in urban poverty. And this campaign went on in 15 cities, 15 cities which were proposed under smart city proposal across 14 states. And the campaign was Hamara Bachpan campaign. We worked actually on 8 core infrastructure elements: adequate water supply, assured electricity supply, sanitation, including solid waste management, efficient mobility or public transport, affordable housing. Now we are talking about this connectivity and digitalization and their participation. I mean, adolescents' active participation. Safety security also one among the core component where we worked on. When we talk about adolescent, it is the period actually they have the significant mental and social development. So when we understand about adolescents' need through a participatory discussion, or from their perspective, when we try to hear, they want the freedom to be the user rather than just the spectators of those spaces. To ensure their participation in the designing of the public spaces, it is very important to bring their perspective. Towards this, HBT takes certain innovative approach. One among the first approach that we take up is the community-led planning. It's an exclusive participatory method of 10-step process wherein adolescents analyze their situation, identify and prioritize their issue, explore potential resources, and identify the stakeholder and plan for a dream neighborhood or a public space. The plans are further presented before the city planners, corporator, mayor, the city authorities, city development department, to bring the necessary changes and to make them friendly as per their suggestion and their requirements. So like how the similar way Cities for Kids audit also is being conducted, gender audit, when we're talking, initially we were discussing about inclusion of gender part, and so gender audit also is taken up, like adolescent girls map out their the city, the neighborhoods, to find out the unsafe factors that make them feel unsafe within their own province. So they present again the adolescents present to the city authorities in a very structured mode. They prepare the 3D models, they prepare a complete map, and they go with their requirement in form of a charter of demands. And they keep making follow-up, and that's how the things they try to get done through the stakeholders. So there are many changes which I can show you in the slides. That's what I requested to bring. That how the adolescents could make the changes in their province. And similarly, one very good thing that I want to highlight here, like the public places adolescent period is again to their right to play. So play spaces across community digital learning centers where they can get the facility of internet, computer systems, and they can try to explore different things. So those things are certain things that Hamara Bachpan is taking up. And yes, when Jayati spoke about the empowerment, yes, leadership building is, and how they will understand that what is required, that providing that information, bringing that courage among them to present. So that is also a part of activity. And the last part where the last mile work that HBT has been doing is the policy advocacy, to include the adolescent-friendly, child-friendly component in the urban plans and budget, include adolescents' consultation in urban planning and designing process at every level, from city master plans to public space design, and include public and communal spaces suitable to make it adolescent-friendly. So these are the certain things that we are working on as a small level, but it has made a great change, and we are happy to share, like Bhubaneswar was declared the first child-friendly city because of the effort of the adolescent and child leaders of Hamara Bachpan, and making Bhubaneswar stand as the first child-friendly city of India. So this work also has been acknowledged in different urban forums across the globe, and HBT could become the recipient of International Heroes Award for Best Adolescent Act by Peace Jam Foundation in 2016. Thank you. I would request you to, if you can, so you can run the slide, and I can show you some of the pictures that effort of adolescents.
Thank you, Arpita. If you can just quickly run through the slides, yes.
Yes. So this is the 10-step planning that I was speaking about, the community-led planning or the children-led planning. Yes, here are the engagement. This is how they present their neighborhood plan or the change plan that will be for different city development officials. This is Mr. Kishan Kumar, the commissioner of when the Smart Bhubaneswar was declared as the first child-friendly smart city. This is the work in Bhopal, where they also presented. These are the changes that the adolescent and children could bring through their advocacy effort. This is the Anganwadi centers, ICDS centers to make them child-friendly. This is the community toilet are the public spaces also, if we can consider like our adolescent considers. And this is how the public space was, I mean the community toilet was transformed. Yeah, the play thing that I was saying about small place, small space, if it is available within the neighborhood, how to make them a space to mingle off to or for social interaction or to play. That is how they give chatter of demand and they do the places transform to a play space. This is a child-friendly park in Domana Hattasai of Bhubaneswar, open space. They, with the request of the adolescent and child leaders, city authority has made the changes, and this is being used by children now. These are the digital learning center where the community space is used as the center where adolescents are coming in and they're getting the opportunity of this. This thing particularly was raised by the adolescents during and post-pandemic period to address that requirement. This was set up, and 16 such type have been set up in Bhubaneswar. Thank you.
Jaya, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry. Arpita, and I was just saying thank you very much. Very nice to see this work, and Bhubaneswar is often the front runner of many firsts which are happening in the country. So we're very happy to be working in that city. Now I'd just like to come to a quick round of second questions, and I would, because I want to make sure that this is interactive and, the people who have joined us today have the opportunity to interact with all of you here as well. But just a quick reflection, follow-up based on, what you've said. I'll start with you, Jayati. So, Jayati, in the next couple of years, I mean, you talked about many sort of metrics of success, but just in the next couple of years, what would success of this program look like to you?
That's a really important one to consider, because success is what we want with all the investments we are making. I'm just listening to all the local level implementing partners, and it's so inspirational to see how they are tackling these challenges of youth-led, initiatives, youth participation in a meaningful way. We are hearing from Hamara Bachpan that often it is tokenistic, often it is very much as Jaya said, very much the beneficiary lens rather than young people as a resource to their city. So for me, as I'll come back to again the evidence to action framework, where the 5 principles we have, and I'll just mention it's actually got 5 principles and 5 domains of change, which is where we are mapping change around in those spaces, in those domains. And empowered youth and their communities is our our first domain of change. Some of the principles which are very important for us to consider as we invest in these programs is inclusion, is equity, is shared learning, and enabling environment. So what would success look for Fondation Botnar or any of us who are partnering in these initiatives that are aiming for young people's well-being at city level, at national level, at global level? I would say creating first that enabling environment. Institutionalizing that enabling environment process will be really important. So it's not about, I mean, having worked in the NGO sector for decades, I would say bringing young people in during the assessment phase to do, get their ideas about feasibility study and what is possible, what is not, what do they find important, having these, conversations, getting them to come to the design and, design phase, having a workshop, all those things. The issue though is how do we continuously, that is the institutionalization, systematically bring them back, continuously, not just bring them back, have them in our programs, which is where the evidence to action is. Participatory action research and learning is our approach. And we are saying co-designing together with young people, co-production of the knowledge with young people, co-acting with them and co-review. They should be a part of the entire cycle of programming. So success to me is they are in the journey as an equal partner, equity of partnerships. And we are able to document and show evidence of that. That will be really important. The second, very quickly, I would say, it's about governance. It's about getting young people in city governance to be seen, to be heard, to be acting very much, to be at the forefront, especially when it comes to, these cities are going to be left, are being felt, lived by young people, but also being left, for them to live in and address all the issues that we adults will be leaving behind. So for me, it is success would look is getting those strategies that are working, getting young people to be interacting in the local discourse with those decision makers of city planning. So very quickly, I can say in our programs in healthy cities, in Cali, in Cali, Colombia, successful program was a systematic way we were, kind of bringing social leaders to interact regularly with city officials that led to, and bringing real-time data on public space, on safety to city planning. Youth councils being set up in Ghana, where youth councillors were interacting at a regular basis with councillors in city plans in Tamale. Similarly, in Senegal, councillors at the city level of Thiès were informing the mayor of what's going on with the city. They became the eyes and ears of the city government. So these are some of the promising solutions, tested evidence-based, solutions we have that we need to share. And that's where the evidence to action framework has got a huge knowledge base, investing in that knowledge of shared learning from local to global, bringing all these different projects together. Thanks very much, Jaya. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, you did, Joyfi. Thank you so much. Jaya, next to you, and you were talking about, the limited awareness among citizens in general about, just public spaces, access, decision-making, co-creation and all of that. How do you think stakeholders can be sensitized to take action on well-being of youth in our cities, essentially?
I think the process has started in a way. I think the work that WRI did last year is a good example of how you can bring together different stakeholders to actually take action on common themes. And personally, I see a lot of examples of local newspapers, for example. I'm talking about organizations like Citizen Matters, yes, who work in specific cities and are a platform for multi-sectoral stakeholders to come in and have discussions that are also open to the public. And then you also translate this to advocacy. through bringing in local level leadership, political leadership, etc. And I think one important thing also is to keep in mind that the fabric of each city is very different. So what works in Bhubaneswar may not work in Chennai, may not work in Jaipur. And it is important for us to localize the tools that we use as much as possible. So I live in Chennai, and in another program that I work with, it's a mental health program. One thing that we see is young people are very fond of cinema, of music, of local art forms. So using that as a tool to then bring in young people as well as other stakeholders who are in that space to bring them together to work for a common cause has been it has been a successful example. So you would see a core clinically focused mental health organization working with an arts-based organization, and that one cause of creating mental well-being unites them. So I think if we get as local as possible and make processes a bit more inclusionary and understand that everybody has some expertise to bring in, we can create a more level playing field of participation. Thanks.
Right. Thank you so much, Jaya. That's a great example. Charu, coming to you, going forward, you talked about, now the next phase remains to be seen how this unfolds. So what is the potential do you see of this program in catalyzing change?
Well, honestly, in my last 10-15 years career, I have seen tremendous potential among the youth groups and adolescents. If we will bring into the project, we will get phenomenal result. Because I have personally seen so many problems being addressed, because sometimes adults who are basically working on the planning and execution, they put their all skilled brains, but these youngsters come up with some very simple solution and things become so easy, and they have passion, they have energy, and they have basically will, because it is directly related to their well-being. Agenda is very much related to their well-being, so they really, if we will collaborate with them and if we will give them adequate space where they can raise their voice and they can involve themselves in decision making, and as Ma'am Jyoti has pointed out, if we make this entire dialogue very sustainable, long term, then we can certainly get very good result. So that is my feeling basically, because I just want to share with you an example of one of my project. It is in the middle of city. There is a huge slum area, and we were organizing a street school, a slum school there, I think 8 years back. Although now all the children from that community mainstreamed into formal education, because after right to education, now children need to attend the formal schooling, and only we can run some after school program there, after school assistance program there. But I still remember that there was a severe lack of public toilets in that community, and that particular area was very much having an unhygienic surrounding because open defecation and everything. So we one of our teacher and our peer educator group asked student that every day in our lessons we will write a letter to the office, and we will write a letter that we need a toilet here. And for 3 months, 3.5 months, they every day 40 letters were landing to the municipal commissioner from the same community. And can you believe, after I think after 4 months, there was a team there and they constructed 10 toilets there, just close to that community, and our children and youth basically managed it. Not India, not our organization, not our teachers took the credit, but it is all because of those children and those youngsters, and they have toilets now. So I see, if we can channelize the power and the passion of these target group, this particular target group, we can certainly get very good results, and we can do something very concrete and productive.
Great, thank you, Charu. What an excellent example. And Neelima, just to piggyback on that and what you said earlier, about what sort of Magic Bus is doing, and Jayati also spoke about institutionalization. So the question to you is, how can adolescents get a seat at the decision-making table? How do we ensure that?
Nilima ji, you're on mute.
Sorry. So I'm saying that definitely it's a very important and I would say alarming question as well, because without direct intervention or without a collaborative approach and a positive mindset of agencies, it's not possible to create a safe and vibrant place according to the youth perspective. But definitely youth can play a very active role in the city planning and development. As my earlier friend says, give an example that with the continuous advocacy and with the continuous raise of the need, I would say, with the continuous raising of the need, we can play a very important role. Youth can play a very important role in the planning or with the scope to work with the agencies. Youth can also demonstrate their work. Youth can also took small steps of the activities in their communities, which can be showcased to the authorities. And as a role model, we can say, youth can highlight their communities as a role model, which can be helpful to create a space for the which can be helpful to create a space in the decision making of the authorities. So definitely, if we can go directly and says them that from next day, please give us the role, please give the role to the youth in your plannings and in your decisions, it will not be happen. They will not even listen to us. But if we go and says them that this is our appeal to come and see our community and see the small steps which youth are taking to develop their communities by their local resources, definitely they will going to listen us. And agencies are, I can say with my own experiences, that developing authorities, those are working with the city development plannings, are also looking for the changing agents. These changing agents can be in the form of youth, can be in the form of NGOs, or can be in the form of different organizations, different departments as well. So I'm really very hopeful and very positive that if we give a certain skills and mentorship to the youth, they can definitely make a change and have a key role in a decision making process. Thank you.
Thank you, Neelima. So I guess persistence and sort of continued advocacy for their own role and a seat at the tables. Thank you. Arpita, sort of the last question to kind of tie this all together for you. You showed a lot of things that are being done at various levels, small projects. And the question to you is, how can these localized actions, small projects, be scaled into city level initiatives that ensure equitable, accessible, and safe public spaces for adolescents?
So there are few pictures that I was showing also, and during my presentation I was talking about, there are some city level infrastructural changes also happened with the participatory mode or with the involvement of the adolescent and youth. Yes, when we are this continuous advocacy effort that we are talking about, continuously reaching out to the authorities, continuously reaching out to the city level or zonal level stakeholders and making them work along with the adolescents towards this objective will bring a change and will. No, I cannot say it will be a change. Yes, it will be a kind of inclusion of this type of discussion during the designing of planning, during the budget allocation, during the implementation of designing. So continuous kind of interaction with the stakeholder will take it forward to the city authorities. And so when some kind of city level infrastructure or city level planning is being made, their adolescent or the youth's participation will of course be required, and they will be called for this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Arpita. So now I'm going to open the floor for questions from everyone who's kind of joined in here. And I can see one question in the chat box from Mayur Nair. Siddharth, I don't know if we have the ability to let them unmute and ask the question, or should I just read it out?
We can just read it out, Jaya.
All right, great. So this is a question from Mayur Naik, and he's asking, what can be done to bring urban design policy in India? Town planning departments and urban development authorities focus completely on build, on building, and then least on the design. So, how can we kind of mainstream design, in our interventions? That is the question. Would anyone like to take that? And maybe just kind of say that, to kind of also paraphrase and add to this, that, urban design is important, or the design, these areas of the public space is a very, very important component. And that's what we've seen in examples of that work that's getting done, by different agencies. How do we, I think, mainstream it is basically the question that is being asked. How do you institutionalize and make that an important component of, city planning and design? Does anyone want to take that?
Well, I would like to share my thoughts here. According to me, public awareness and active participation of the community should be a very important part of the designing, because this is a very rightly says in our country, development authorities are basically busy to build a structure or build a building, but they don't have a proper designing skills. And even when they are deliver that building to the public use, there is no proper channel for maintenance. There is no proper channel even to make public understand that how you should use this. So every time everybody have their own understanding, and basically this understanding is based on the experiences, which create a very big harm to the designing and very big harm to the public building structure as well, sometimes building structure as well. So as per my opinion, awareness and direct action by youth and the public can be the only solution of the design.
Thank you very much, Neelima. Does anyone here have any questions? I don't see anything in the chat box unless there is, and I've missed it, but any other questions that anyone here has?
Jaya, is it okay if I comment on the previous question, as well as I have a couple of comments on the presenters who were talking about participation? How do we bring young people and youth participation to be institutionalized? I mean, I'm not going to be able to answer the question that is in the chat box, because I'm not a planner, nor have I worked in India. I've been away from India for the last 30 years. So what I wanted to say is that I have lots of planners who are, in our program and projects that I work with. And basically, there is the planners don't have the training to think human-centered design. They don't see people-centered, they see bricks and mortar. That's what the training is. So it is now a new challenge that we have. There are no, from where I sit, I haven't from the NGO sector that's worked with cities and planning departments and asking them questions. I find there is a huge gap in understanding, and that knowledge gap has to be filled. And that is through that creating those spaces of interaction between NGOs, between, as my colleagues at local partnership implementation level are saying, that create those connectivity between those who are planning a city and those who are living in it. There's a huge imbalance of connection and understanding and perspectives. That's something I think we need to consider in a project itself. And WRI is I believe, you're quite a few planners there, and something that you need to think about, that it is, you cannot have a sustainable city. The built environment is very much the lived space. And without the human feeling, that's subjective, not just subjective, but feeling, lived in experiences are so important for planners to consider. But then we have to create that space. Similarly, the issue of youth, institutionalizing the youth participation in city planning and governance systems. I think it's not just working with youth and helping them and letting, wonderful experience of how youth have been advocating and they've gone and the letters they wrote, all that is advocacy. But I think another major part of our programs should be working with the city governments, changing their hearts and minds, bringing, in capacity building of the local government officials is critical if we want, what you asked me, what success would look like. And I would say success would need agents of change in the city government, in, within the local level officials who are working. We need those champions who will champion the cause of young people. And that's the transformation we need to bring through these projects. I'll stop there. Thank you.
There?
Yes, sorry, am I audible?
Yes.
Great, sorry, my internet connection wasn't unstable there. Thank you very much, Pragati. Rajiv, you go ahead and ask your question. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Rajiv,
And if I think, we can go ahead and close and talk back over to you. I think I enjoyed this interaction very much. And it's always a pleasure to, talk with people, what kind of impact.
Okay. Sorry, I think we lost Jaya. Jaya, can you hear us? Back to you, Siddharth.
Should we take Rajiv's question? Okay, so Rajiv has a question which says that there is a thin line between creating dedicated adolescent spaces and generic public spaces with adolescent priorities. How do we prioritize adolescent needs in public spaces with an aim of making them equitable for all? Does anybody want to take this?
I'll try and take a stab on this. So basically what Rajiv is trying to ask us is, how do we bring this, how do we say that, adolescent is a priority? But I think one of the things that, I want to sort of put out is that we're not saying that one is over anybody else. What we're trying to say is, we need to bring that balance and bring the perspective of user group as a whole, as all the user groups. But for us, the target audience becomes adolescents because that is one of the missing gaps in the entire ecosystem of how our cities are being built. So it is more about that conscious effort to bring the balance back and bring the fresh perspective of how adolescents think, what is the dynamics in their existence, in their usage, etc. It does not imply that we want to neglect or push out anything else or any other user group out of that whole, comprehensive approach of specific development or public spaces development, to be very specific. The idea is to sort of bring that bring that lens of equity where all kind of users are taken care of. And for us, adolescents are the target group that we want to keep working with. So where we think that this is one of the user group that is completely, being sidelined. So that's where the whole conversation is focused on adolescents. And that's where this whole layering of what adolescent needs are, what their requirements are, we want to bring that need, rather than just saying that adolescent is a priority and others are not. No, it's about bringing that balance, bringing that perspective, bringing that facility, and making sure that the public realm in the cities are actually catering to all the user types. And I would say that this is one user group which is transitional, neither adults nor children. So I think this ideology is really important for the transformation to happen, because they need to belong where they are. They need to feel welcome, belong, and they need to also sort of inculcate more responsibility in them. So I think inclusion is and building their capacities which can guide their education inclinations, which can guide their economic inclinations, which can guide their belonging inclinations for that city space, within that city, within the geographies that they are operating in. And it can also give them a sense of comfort where they feel safe to voice their opinions, put forth their needs, and actually work it in a positive manner to make a difference within the societies that they live in. And especially since we are working with the vulnerable groups or the lower income groups, it makes more sense, it makes more relevance, because they're always short of some or the other facility. And these conversations, these platforms actually become channels for them to have a good exposure, a larger understanding of, the larger, bigger visions, and, the whole perspective of how they can better their own lives, and how they can better their own communities, to bring that whole quality of life that they strive for every day. So I think hopefully this sort of answers the question, and maybe if someone else in the panel wants to take it up.
Thanks, Prerna. I think I'd like to add one thing very quickly. And coming from a much higher level, I think a lot of things that adolescents ask for apply to a lot of people in general. So they ask for sanitation facilities or greenery or clean air, access to clean water, lighting. And I think when you work towards these things, maybe you're creating better cities where people are happier in general. And maybe that also helps adolescents interact better with their communities. So when you're talking to your neighbors or to your friends, everybody is generally, hopefully, in a slightly better place. And that strengthens adolescents' well-being also in an indirect manner.
Back to you, Siddharth.
I have a question for Arpita. So Arpita, we understand that adolescents are at this very critical juncture where they seek to be independent, but they're not entirely independent because a lot of their decisions and choices have to be vetted by their caretakers or their parents. So understanding this, involving parents or getting their buy-ins into such an initiative is also important, because in many cases or in cities like Jaipur and Bhubaneswar, we've understood that the children or adolescents actually need permission to be part of certain initiatives or be able to go out as well. So in your experience, how have you been able to, get those buy-ins from their caretakers, and how have you been able to involve them into their programs and, make sure that they can actively contribute to initiatives as such?
Thanks for that. Again, this is a very yes, the thing that you spoke about, that's the real challenge in the field. The method that we follow, or how we address that challenge, I would like to bring that to your. I would like to bring that here. First thing is continuous engagement with the community. here we spoke about the adolescent and children and all, but when we are adopting a community, the first work we do is the community mapping. It is the entire process where all age group, all segment of people, they get involved, where the community stakeholders, I mean the grassroots level officials or the grassroots level personnel, they get involved. So the first rapport starts from there. And since it's not the only activity that we have been doing in the community, we have also other activity with the adolescent girls separately, with the boys separately, with the youth, with the mothers. Yes. So when we started with the children, so bringing children out of the house, making their participation ensure in different activities, whether it is training, whether it is a child club formation, whether it is bringing them to the child club activities every weekend. We had to also work with the mother group. So we had to also we had to also had separate mother groups in that same community. So it was a well-informed kind of information that what exactly we are doing with the children at the family level, at the community level as a whole.
Thank you so much, Arpita. That definitely helps, and it will also help us plan our engagements or streamline them better in the future. Okay, are there any other questions that we have for today? Okay. Okay, I guess then this brings us to the end of our webinar. I believe that this was a very interesting discussion. I would like to thank all our panelists for joining us today and for their valuable insight into adolescents, public spaces, and the kind of work that they have done within this domain. I would also like to thank all our audience for joining us, and I hope that you enjoyed our session. The recording of this webinar shall be made available to you all, and you can reach out to me if you have any questions or any feedback from this session. One second. Yeah, good evening and take care. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.